Ladies and gentlemen here, this is an interesting treat we're going to be doing right now. This is an interview with Giovanni from France. And he is an erstwhile objectivist, not an actual objectivist. I'll let him say a few words about that. And we're just going to go on and discuss objectivism and France and the modern culture and whatever comes up. So he's just been telling me that he doesn't consider himself an actual objectivist, but more of a student of objectivism. So, Gio, when did you find objectivism? How long have you been reading it? Why don't you describe yourself as an objectivist?
I think I heard the first time about Ayn Rand. I don't remember. It was in 2009 or 2010.
All right.
It was a time when I started to be interested in liberal ideas, but it's not liberal in the American sense of the word, because you know that the word liberal doesn't have the same meaning in USA and in Europe, because in America, liberal means leftist, something like that. But in Europe, it means something different. It's more like classical liberalism, you know.
Like Frederick Bastiat, for example.
Yeah. And John Locke, all this. I don't remember. But you know, all the tradition from the Enlightenment to the 19th century, usually we call it liberal, but it's not the same. Even today in France or in Europe, when we say liberal, we don't mean leftist. We mean somebody who is for liberty, like it's close to libertarian somehow, you know?
Yeah.
It's not. Of course, libertarianism is something very specific. It's a movement from the 60s in the US, but somehow it's something like this. If you take the word libertarian in a large sense, but I started to be interested in those kind of ideas, because previously I was kind of socialist, we could say today, but I didn't identify myself as a socialist at the time, but I think I was somehow like that, and or leftist, something like that, and and I crossed several names. I discovered at the time new names like Ludwig von Mises, Friedrich Hayek, Frederick Bastiat. I never heard of him before. Ayn Rand, and I discovered all this universe completely new to me, and I read a lot of those authors, and but first I wasn't so much interested in Ayn Rand, because I was in kind of libertarian French circles, and they dismissed Ayn Rand a lot. They say, "Oh, it's the cult of Ayn Rand," you know all the kind of thing that libertarians say about Ayn Rand. There were mixed, you know. There was positive things and negative things, and I wasn't so much interested in Ayn Rand, but with time, I started to read The Virtue of Selfishness. Actually, it was, as I told you on Facebook, it was a partial version in French of The Virtue of Selfishness, because they cut a lot of chapters. And yes, and I find it interesting, but I wasn't fully agree with some points. I wasn't completely convinced, but I felt at the time that it was a very, very strong argument, in the sense that it was very logical, and yes. And later, I discovered like YouTube channel of maybe you. I don't know if you know it. Jan Hofeld. He make Socratic interviews. He's objectivist. He makes Socratic interviews with journalists and politics. He's American, and I find it very interesting his way of interviewing, because it was very logical, and with the Socratic techniques, he showed the contradictions, and I find it very efficient. And at the time, I was like hesitating between anarchism and limited government, and I was not sure completely. I had a anarchist train, but I was not completely sure. And this guy, he made a lot of debates with anarchists, and he convinced me. He convinced me with his argument. When I was listening to his debates with anarchists. And I wrote him an email to say that I like his stuff, etc. And he advised me to read Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand by Leonard Peikoff. And so I knew about Ayn Rand, but not so much, because I have only read a few. I also had seen at the time the Fountainhead, the movie by King Vidor. It was my first contact, even before reading Ayn Rand. Yes. And yes, and I really, really enjoyed it, like it very much. But now that I have read the book, of course, the book is much better. But at the time, I have never read a book in English, so I found it very hard. I understood that he was connected with Objectivism, the philosophy of Ayn Rand. So I thought, okay, there is Atlas Shrugged. It's called the strike in French, la grève. And so instead of reading the advice he gave me, I read Atlas Shrugged. And it was very interesting experience. Again, I wasn't fully convinced. It takes time. I have to think about a lot of things, and I go back to him and I said, "Okay, I read Atlas Shrugged, but I'm not sure about this point." And he replied to me, "No, I didn't advise you to read Atlas Shrugged. I advised you to read Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand by Leonard Peikoff." Okay, and I tried to start to read it. It was very hard for me at the beginning, but I continue and read it. And finally, I see that it was to understand that it was the whole system. Everything is connected, and I started to continue to read more about Objectivism and Ayn Rand, etc. And I think it's now, it was 4 years ago, it's since 4 years that I'm really studying in depth Objectivism. But I don't call myself an Objectivist, because I don't regard me as a perfect expert who is master on any point of Objectivism, despite the fact that I know Objectivism much better than a lot of people, most French people, this is for sure. But even with American objectivists, people who claim to be objectivists that I discuss with, sometimes I felt that they don't have a very deep understanding. Sometimes it depends, of course, of the people. But there is a lot of people, young people, that I met in the OCON, for example, in the 2018. Young people like 20 years old or 18. They call themselves objectivists sometimes, and they don't know. They don't understand everything, Sometimes it happens. It depends on the people.
I've seen that happen, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't call myself an objectivist. I think I have to. Yes, student. You say that student of objectivism. So it's fine. It's like I'm a student of objectivism, and I don't. Yes, I don't live by objectivism. You know, it's not. I don't live like it's a guide of my in my life. Of course, I consider myself as a rational person. I try to be the more rational I consider to be. But okay, but I don't. Yes, I don't claim to be a representative of objectivism. I study it very seriously, very deeply, and I read a lot of things. But yes, I don't. I don't claim to be John Galt or Howard Hall.
Well, what is the difference between just studying it and actually practicing it in your mind? You mean to practice it, you would have to be a world-saving hero?
Yes, but I mean, I think practicing it is to be very. For example, I don't. Sometimes I can be lost. You know, I can be unsure. You know, like about many things. I can be not fully convinced by some point of objectivism, or not sure, because it's not that I'm not fully convinced, but I see that there is a point. At first, I'm not sure to be convinced, but I think, okay, I have to know much more what are the arguments to see if I'm convinced or not. And so being an objectivist, in my mind, is to understand perfectly everything and to live by it, to be very productive, very independent, very I don't know, all the the 7 virtues of objectivism.
I have to dissent just a little bit there. I think to be an objectivist means to act on what you understand. And of course you should try to understand things, and the more you understand the better, and the philosophy is about how to understand and what you should work towards and so on. But when you come to understand something as true, that is something that you should use as your basis for action. Truth is your basis for action, whatever you come to understand as true. So you can't have your definition of truth be a perfect understanding, because no one would ever act. So whatever your understanding is what you have to act on. For example, I just did a video attacking the chairman of the Ayn Rand Institute's views, disagreeing with him, which is pretty scary ground for an objectivist to stand on. But I don't have anything else I can do based on my understanding of the situation. And I'm not asking anybody else's understanding of the situation. I'm acting on my own. Now, if I were to ask other people's understanding of the situation, I would just go with Yaron Brook, because he's chairman of the Ayn Rand Institute. But I understand the situation differently than what he seems to, and so I'm pointing out where I see him as being wrong. And so there are two very serious objectivists who disagree in public, and we're both objectivists. So I would say, don't worry so much about being perfect and just go out there and tear the world up.
Yes, but you can see also that there is a lot of libertarians who call themselves objectivists, and they don't understand what objectivism is, but they think they understand because they have very superficial understanding. And we can also fall in this kind of trap. If I meet someone who say, the objectivism is based on the non-aggression axiom, you know. And he say, so I agree. I advocate the non-aggression axiom, like Ayn Rand, and so I am objectivist. You know, it doesn't. It's
Well, so what you have to do is you have to take your understanding and then charge out there into the world and see what happens. And when that guy posts a video on YouTube and Mr. Cropper replies and says that's no basis for a philosophy, the non-aggression principle is way up in ethics. It's way high up in the ideas. Then that guy needs to take account of of what he's hearing around him. And similarly, when you're debating about immigration or whatever it is, and you say you don't want to have a misinformed opinion, and you're not sure whether or not you have a misinformed opinion, but when you do think you have an informed opinion, that is definitely a time for you to speak out. When you look around and you think, okay, I understand what's going on here, then that is a time when you should. I mean, of course, if you don't have all the information, you should gather more information. But there must be times in your life when you do feel like you are certain of certain things.
Oh yes, of course. But you need to be certain. You need a specific amount of knowledge.
What? A specific amount? Yeah, well, I mean, we would have to give an exact example. I'm seeing a little bit of theory-practice dichotomy. You think the theory is fine, but to practice it is more complex. And I think that they can't really be separated. To practice objectivism is just to have an objective attitude about the world. So the way you evaluate people, the way you evaluate theories, the way you evaluate actions, that's what it means to be objectivist. So you're probably more objectivist than you're giving yourself credit for, I suspect. I don't know. I mean, maybe you go to church and stuff. I don't know.
No. But yeah, you say to be objective. To be an objectivist is to be objective in relation to the world. Because so I'm not sure I'm always objective. Maybe I think no. Okay, I think I am. I don't know, because sometimes. The thing is, I don't want to go in too much personal stuff. Right. I can argue with you about why I don't consider myself completely objectivist.
No, but keeping it philosophical, we could say you as an objectivist saw the fact that there's not enough objectivist literature. So what do you do about it? You understood the situation. You understand the situation of Ayn Rand's literature in France, right?
Yeah.
Who did you go to? Did you go to some authority and ask them whether or not Ayn Rand's books need to be published in France?
No.
You are the authority on that.
Mm.
You're the world authority on that right now.
Yeah, it's very nice to say this, but maybe, yeah.
Earlier I said you're not being an objectivist because you can't be a world hero. Right?
Yeah, but no, yeah, okay.
There you go. But the door is open.
Yeah. But maybe I will be a hero tomorrow, but today I'm not.
No, but you never are. Ayn Rand is still a villain. She's been dead 40 years, and she's still a great villain in many people's minds. So
no, I was not saying this about people's mind. I was saying just about myself, because for now I just because you refer to the fact that I translated Ayn Rand non-fiction works, but for now it's just on my computer.
Sure.
And I don't know. I don't know what. Okay, my goal is to have it published at the one day, but I don't know if this day will occur. We will see. Sure. So maybe if it occurs, maybe I can. Yes, it will be an achievement. But for now, it's just on my computer.
Well, I'm
So,
pointing out to you a place where it would be very easy for you to even achieving the very high bar you set of being a world savior of some kind. You can achieve that very high bar, apparently, by just bringing the ideas of Ayn Rand into France. You can do something that could change the course of a whole nation in 20 or 50 years. I mean, so, and you don't even, I didn't even set that high of a bar. I think you can just go to work and be a good plumber and be an objectivist. So I don't think that you have to save the world, but you have a chance to do something pretty amazing. And there's no authority that you have to ask. You are the authority. It was your judgment that Ayn Rand needed to be. So earlier when you said, how can we ever be sure? And, when do we know whether or not we have all the information? And yet here's an example of a case when you are certain you've got as much information as you could possibly need. You know that the books aren't available in French. So you can be an objectivist. Do it. Go do it. But as far as translating her stuff, yeah, it's just, it shows you that there's an opportunity to do something big, huge, not just as an objectivist. Objectivists can just go to work and do a good job at work and be a good objectivist, as far as I'm. See, that's the theory-practice dichotomy I was hounding you about a second ago. But go ahead.
no, go ahead, you. I was listening to you.
No, I'm sure that the ladies and gentlemen are enjoying this very much. I always I'm always mad about France, and I always say France this and that because I can't see anything good going on in the country. Same thing with Britain. And, I see something good in Poland. I see Austria doing something to defend themselves. France, I never hear any good news. And so now, hearing from you that Ayn Rand's ideas are absent, that this is a very bad situation, it makes more sense to me now. There's not a good body of ideas spreading and getting bigger in France the way in America we've got the anarcho-capital. Let's talk about the anarcho-capitalists for a second. I take them as sort of a positive development because all we have to do is sort of set them straight on their philosophy. They've already got a lot of the concretes. They understand forced taxation is wrong. They understand the government is based on the use of force. They understand the initiation of force is wrong. They have a lot of stuff that 20, 30, 40 years ago, we didn't have people convinced of this stuff. So the anarcho-capitalists, to me, are a positive development. We just need to work with it. It's just messy clay, and we've got to shape them into something. And you were tempted by anarchy, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think about anarchy? Is there anarcho-capitalists or some... Why were you tempted by it? Do you think it's positive? Speak to that for a second, if you would.
There is, in fact, because there is no objectivism in France, but there is libertarianism. But however, it's still a very, very tiny number of people. It's very, very small. It's almost by chance that I discovered this kind of circles. So it's not as if anarchism, in the libertarian version, it's not as if libertarianism was a big thing in France. Maybe I don't know. I'm thinking of it. Okay, maybe it started. Yes, maybe it started the ideas of libertarianism maybe grew up a little bit in France those last year, but it's still quite new. But objectivism, it's blank out, nothing. Yeah. And I was thinking also about you seems to be very optimistic about the publication of the book will change could change the nation. I see, because in Germany, for example, almost all the books of Ayn Rand has been translated, And I know a little bit the translator. I speak with him sometimes, and he told me once that the book of Ireland in Germany doesn't sell so much, And I think I'm not. Of course, I cannot predict the future, but I think in France maybe it will be the same, Maybe it will. I'm not sure. The thing is that it's. I don't know how to say it, but it's very exotic Ireland for Europe and especially for France. It's very. When you read Ireland, you understand that she speaks to a very specific audience, which is the American people. She wrote and she speaks for the American people. And sometimes when I read her, I can understand that the principles, the system, etc. But when it comes to very concrete stuff she's speaking about, she's speaking only for American people, and you feel a little bit excluded as an European sometimes, because also it's very simple. Also, she speaks about current events of the 60s, 70s taking place in America, and most of the time. Okay, sometimes it's world events, but most of the time it's very, very specific American event. And yes, and when you read, I don't remember the title of the last essay in Philosophy Who Needs It. Don't Let It Go, I think. It was the title, and it's about the difference of the sense of life between Europe and Americans. And she make she explained that the American sense of life is somehow, she say, American sense of life is consistent with objectivism, as opposed to European sense of life which is not consistent with objectivism. So, and okay, what does it mean? It means that you can understand that she talk in matter of principle, but also you can take it as, okay, so I'm European, what can I do with it now? You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
It's very. I am. Last time I was in Prague, in IronCon 2000. Yes, it was in February. It was the first event of the Iron Institute in Europe, and I asked Yaron Brook a question like. I don't remember exactly the wording of my question. It was something like, how do you convince people? Because for European people, objectivism is so much American that if you argue objectivism, it's like you are arguing we have to be Americans. We have to copy American society, American value, and have no identity of our own. It's like you are saying that. And I asked him how to convince those people who understand it like this. He didn't really answer my question, because he said it's not about being American, it's about being individualist. And I agree, but but how do you convince people that it's different? Because for them, individualist, it's like being American somehow. So it's you're trapped a little bit. So for the people, for the European people, especially I think in France, okay, it's American stuff, as I said in my video, Ireland and the French, and they just ignore the risk. Even if we publish the books of Ireland, I'm afraid. It's not my wish, but I'm afraid that they will just ignore it. Like, okay, it's interesting for the history to learn about American culture, but it's only it could be only this. Sorry, I don't know if you hear the notification of my phone.
Yeah, it's fine, no problem. So, would they just ignore it? I think there is definitely the possibility that they would try to ignore it. That's what's definitely been happening with Ayn Rand for the last 40 or more years in America. They just ignore it, and they just say, la 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 la, you know, she's a fascist, she slept with one of her cohorts, and they just ignore it. But what happens is, anybody who comes onto the public scene in the United States, they get screamed at them from the audience for weeks, for months. Every appearance they go to, people say, you've got to talk to the Objectivists. And they end up sitting down with the Objectivists, or they end up inviting Yaron Brook on, or they end up inviting Leonard Peikoff or Amy Peikoff, and they end up talking to the Objectivists. So the Objectivists have a voice just because nobody else has ideas that are coherent. And I had this experience when I very first got on YouTube, and there were virtually no intellectual videos on YouTube. So if you got on YouTube and you were into philosophy or ideas or education, you would run into Mr. Cropper and the Objectivists, because we were the very first people on YouTube. So I got all these intellectuals coming to my videos and subscribing to me and watching me and telling me that they liked my stuff. And then over time they start realizing, this is like a consistent body of stuff here. This is like a whole school of ideas. This isn't just playing around. These Objectivists are some serious shit. And a lot of them, like I can remember Spike Bravo and Steph Bot, Aaron0083, these guys, they described themselves as Objectivist in the early days until they got made fun of endlessly because they were not Objectivist, but they saw the power of this coherency of ideas and they wanted to play around with it. They want to be part of it. And of course they weren't serious thinkers, and they never, Steph Bot became Steph Molyneux, and he's never become a serious thinker. He said that he was an Objectivist at one point. But anyways, these ideas are very serious, and they're the most coherent ideas. They're the only coherent ideas. And people who take ideas seriously just have to take objectivism into account. It is basically, today, the left is imploding, and the right is everyone discussing libertarianism. Now, what is libertarianism? It's Ayn Rand's ideas. The entire right is Donald Trumpism, libertarianism, free markets, reduce the government, fuck the government, get the government out of our hair. Everything's all about libertarianism, which is Ayn Rand's ideas through and through. So if you put her ideas on the scene, then because of the fact that there are no other ideas present, there just isn't anything on the left, they're just a vacuum, it will grow.
Yeah, I heard you saying something like that to Ruka in a video, yes. Yes, anyway, I'm not determinist, of course, so I don't know the future. I'm not saying that it can't happen. Yes,
additionally, let me say that Europe might not be the same as America. We're different, right? But the similarities between Europe and America are extremely high. There are a lot of similarities compared to Pakistan, China, India. So America and Europe, as far as I'm concerned, America and Europe are just like, there's the old guy and the younger guy. But
yeah, this is Western, yes, Western culture anyway. There is a lot of yes, I agree. There is a lot of in common.
Yeah. At some point, if there's just a total collapse, then it's American ideas that come in and are everything's rebuilt with American ideas every single time. After World War II, after World War I, every single time it's free markets, rule of law, constitutionalism, democratic, republican. That's what gets put in place every time things collapse. So if ideas collapse in France, then it will have to be the good ideas that take place. So it would be nice for y'all to have a few copies of Ayn Rand laying around, goddammit.
Yeah, but I sometimes I think I'm just thinking, how can we as French appropriate objectivism in to make it French somehow. It's I know it sounds weird when I say it, but to make it French in the sense that you cannot rely, because sometimes Ayn Rand rely on a lot of on American culture, on the Constitution of the United States. We can not say in France, we cannot rely on the Constitution, American Constitution, you understand? But, however, we can rely on the principle of the American Constitution, which are, some of them, of course, are common with our values, because we have also la Déclaration des droits de l'homme, the Declaration of the Human Rights, or the Right of Man. Yes, and there is the recognition of yes, man's right, property, life, liberty, etc. And it's a little bit in the same spirit, like I know that Jefferson was the writer of the American Constitution, and he was influenced a lot by French intellectuals, and the Declaration of man's right in France was influenced by Jefferson. It was both way, and it's very Jeffersonian somehow. So of course there is connection, and I try to think about all this connection and how I can make, yes, appropriate objectivism, and also explain to my fellow citizen that it's not only American stuff, because we share some principle with the United States. The thing is that in the Declaration of the Right of Man in France, in the French Declaration, there is also mixed influence. It's very influenced by John Locke, but it's also influenced by Rousseau, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the philosopher. And Rousseau is he's kind of ancestor of communism or socialism. He was against property. He was collectivist anyway. So it's yes. I have to deal with all this contradiction, but also, as you know, as Ayn Rand said, the United States, the founding fathers also have some contradictions, and you have to deal with the religious aspect and etc. And so yes, and I try to I think about all these things right now, and it's complicated because sometimes Ayn Rand said, like, yes, the United States is the only moral country in the world. So if France is an immoral country, as such, despite the fact that it has the Declaration of the Right of a Man's Right, despite all this, what does it mean? It means that we have to, I don't know, to become America. It can be. It sounds a little bit like that. It can be interpreted like that. Even I'm not. Of course, I understand that it's not exactly what Ayn Rand meant. But when you read it very literally, you can interpret it like that. But however,
if you go down that road and do become America, as you say, it's going to just mean freedom and individualism. Now, freedom and individualism is a really big mess. It's got like strip clubs and poker bars and tall skyscrapers and vulgar mansions and fast food and terrible movies that just bring in the biggest crowds. I mean, freedom is a goddamn mess, and it's a lot of the stuff that freedom produces is low grade, bad, lowest common denominator culture. So freedom is your only hope. Becoming like America is your only hope, and it's the most sophisticated culture in the world. It's the bravest culture in the world. It's the most moral culture in the world, but it's also the most decadent culture in the world. It's got the most pornographers, and it's got the worst art and the worst movies are made in Hollywood. So freedom is it's a
We have
mess.
also very bad movies.
What's that?
We have also very bad movies in France.
Yes, I understand that to protect French cinema industry or whatever, there's very limited amount of foreign stuff that can be played on TV and stuff. Is that right?
I'm not sure if it's still sorry, I'm looking for the word. If it's still true today, you know, but there was, I think, I'm not sure, but there was a law about that. Yes, about the what we call in French l'exception culturelle française, the French cultural exception, and there was regulations about a rate of French movies or music in the radio, some stuff like that. Yes, there was kind of protectionism. Yes.
Cultural protectionism.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But yes.
So now, see, America doesn't have a culture to protect. We just protect individual rights and let the individuals do as they please. And so, in order to have a culture at all, you're going to have to protect individual rights first, and then your culture is going to be erased. I mean, America doesn't have like a French culture, tradition. But you guys in France are going to have your damn country erased with this mass immigration thing. So now, where do you live? Do you live someplace where you can tell me if things are bad where you live? Or are you going to be arrested and jailed if you say something bad about Muslims?
No. I live in Dijon. It's in Burgundy. You can check on a map, Dijon, Dijon, G or J. Anyway, it's in the middle of France. No, it's not so bad here. You know, it's quiet. And I was thinking also, in the Anon journals, she wrote something about France when there was during the Second World War. She said something. I said it from memory that it was the most independent spirit country or something like that. Maybe later I will find the quote. But she was writing, in a personal journal about the fact that dictatorship and totalitarianism can take over any country, because she said, okay, we in the past we think Germany can never. We were surprised by the Nazi because Germany was a country of philosophy, of culture, etc., civilization, very sophisticated. And she was explaining in her journal that it can take over Germany, Italy, and it was at the time that France became kind of not kind, but it was a dictatorship because the Nazi, invaded France, and there was it was not directly the Nazi, it was a government in agreement with the Nazi, but it was a French government, and it was a dictatorship, anti-Semitic dictatorship. And she was writing about this and saying that even France, like the most independent spirit country, I don't remember her words, sorry, but even France can become a totalitarian dictatorship. So she said any country can become no country, no culture is protected by the end of freedom. It can happen to any culture at any time. Yes. I was just remembering because she was praising France as being somehow the country of freedom or something like that. I don't. Sorry if I don't have the word exactly in mind, but I was surprised that she was saying that. But it was in 1940, so she was young, maybe.
Well, I mean, in 1940, France had some rough times ahead of it there, right?
Yeah.
Now I've got on the screen here the folks will be able to see your blog, Le Objectivism, and the picture of the Statue of Liberty.
You know that the Statue of Liberty is French.
Yeah, that's my whole thing here. Is France gave us that damn statue. So there is a big connection between France and the United States.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why I'm so damn mad about them all the time. You guys are letting us down here. You gave us the damn statue. Now come on. What do you think is going to happen? Are you guys going to have Muslim mayors pretty soon?
Muslim what?
Mayors like Sadiq Khan in London? Are you going to have a mayor of... You guys don't... Do you even have elected mayors? You probably have magistrates or something, huh?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Do you elect mayors for your cities?
Yeah, of course, yeah. But your question was that is there any Muslim mayors in France now?
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know. Maybe I think there are probably. I don't know exactly, but
is there? I have a feeling that there's more of a discussion in the American media about France's situation than there is in the French media. Is that the case?
No, I don't think so. No, I think we discuss a lot about because if you are referring to Islam and Muslim immigration and all that stuff. It's a topic that is debated every day, all the day. Not all the day, but every day in France. Yes, it's a very hot topic. Yeah.
And what are the sides? Should we deport them? Should we stop immigration? Is there any voice for that side? Yes, there is people. Yes, of course, there is a lot of different opinions, and you have a lot of people who want to stop immigration. You have all the opinions you can imagine, like completely stop immigration, closed border. You have full open border. You have all the intermediate positions. So yes, there is different voices, but the main I guess I'm thinking about this right now while talking, and I'm thinking the main position is quite welcoming foreigners in general. I'm not sure. I'm thinking it's very hard to. I cannot talk for the whole country. Like I cannot speak for whole France. There is maybe it's 50-50. There is not so much people who say like we have to completely maybe like sorry I'm very hesitating about my words because I'm not sure how to put it. I don't think there is not so much people who want to. No. sorry, I'm not sure. Is this?
This is very hard to know what the majority of people thinks. Of course, majority of people are anxious about Islam terrorism, but the point is that in the media, in the mainstream media, the what you hear is you have to make a very clear line between peaceful Muslims and extreme or radical terrorism Muslim, and what you hear is that it has nothing to do. It's two different things. Of course, it's not the only. It's the mainstream thing that we hear. But of course, there are people who deny it, who say no, it's not two. There is no two Islam. There is one Islam, and there is people who want to stop immigration. You know, like in the second round, in the last presidential election, there was Emmanuel Macron, the current president, and there was Marine Le Pen. I don't know if you heard about the last election in France. And Marine Le Pen was quite close border, like stop immigration, maybe completely.
Yeah, but
you know?
Isn't there constant harassment and like she was called to court for tweets? She tweeted some video or something. I mean, like she's being harassed, right? The Le Pen, every time they say something about or against Islam, they're called to court for hate speech.
Yes, but it's complicated because her party, you know, has a very, very specific history. Her party is it's complicated topic because you have to take in account a lot of factors, the history, where she come from. I don't know how to synthesize it. Anyway, she has very bad reputation for a lot of. She's called a racist, you know, most of her opponents. But I would call her socialist because she's you know, she's not like the American Republican or the right wing in Britain or in America. She's very, very statist, you know. And of course, she's you know, it's not only about immigration; it's about economics. Like she's like Bernie Sanders, you know, in economic field, you know. She praised when there was the American election. A lot of people say, "Oh, Marine Le Pen, she liked Trump," and they accuse her of liking Trump because Trump is the devil, the absolute devil in France, as you can imagine. But she said, no, I like Trump, but I also like Bernie Sanders because, you know, because for her it was she doesn't mind. She said it's like against capitalism. You know, she's an anti-capitalist. I think, first of all, you know. And her party, you know, is the Front National. Now it's called the Rassemblement National. It's changed the name. But her party historically was founded by her father. And there was a lot of people who were like in the collaboration with the Nazi, you know, at the time. Of course, you can find some people in all the French party. You can make this kind of accusation in all the parties in France, but it in this particular party, it was very prevalent. Like her father was very he how to say it? He advocated him. Sorry, I'm looking again for my words.
So let me summarize real quick. So the socialists who in very recent times have collaborated with Soviet Russia, as recently as the 1980s, they were collaborating with Russia. The socialists are mad about this other party that may have collaborated 70 years ago during the last war with the Nazis. Is that accurate? So, I mean, I know that I know that Soviet Russia had an effect on the French political scene.
It's a bit simple because, you know, the left, it's complicated. The problem is that it's very complicated issue. If we talk in French, I can explain you, but it's a little bit hard for me in English. Sorry. The thing is that in the left, the left was in power, you know, in the 80s, for example. There was a socialist president, François Mitterrand, at the time. And the Soviet Union still existed at this time. But the socialists of this time were aware that Soviet Russia was completely it couldn't be the model anymore. So they were completely like more pro-American, even if they were socialists, than pro-Soviet. You know, there is a famous phrase from the president of the time. He said, "I just see that the rockets are on the east and not on the west." Something like that. I don't remember exactly. But so you know, there were. I don't want to because I look like I'm defending the left, but it's not what I want to do. But it's not like the French left was always like praising Soviet Union. It was more complicated. They say like, no, it's not real socialism. You know, this kind of rhetoric. So they dissociate with them officially. You know, in their. Of course, you can say, but the ideas are the same. It gives the same result. I agree with this, but it's not. It's different that the people who had collaborated with the Nazi has never dissociated. You know, even in officially in what they say. So I don't know if I am clear.
So now the left, because they're cozying up to Islam, they're going to hate Jews today. But what about the right? Are they anti-Jewish? Is Marine Le Pen anti-Jewish?
Marine Le Pen, it's herself. I think no. But the right, in general, there is in the right French right wing, there is a part of it, not all the right wing, but there is a substantial part of it in the far right, and including in the audience of Marine Le Pen, in her public and the people who vote for her. There is people who are anti-Jewish. Anti-Jewish people. I speak for France, of course, but anti-Jewish people, you can find them in all the political spectrum, you know, in the left and in the right. But I think it's very in France there is more anti-Semitism in the right than there is anti-Semitism in the right in America, I think.
I don't see very much anti-Semitism on the right in America. I mean, there's occasional loons and there's always nutbags, but it certainly isn't systematic. I think people on the right in America like Jews. There's a lot of Jews on the right in America. So, but that's disheartening to hear that you can find anti-Semitism all over the spectrum. Now, of course, anti-Semitism is going to be big and growing with the amount of Muslims, because Muslims hate Jews. So anti-Semitism is just going to get worse and worse as far as France is concerned, right? Am I wrong about that?
Oh no, you're completely right. There is the thing is there is more and more anti-Semitism in France, and there is always this discussion because there is some people who are pointing the fact that why there is more and more anti-Semitism in France, because there are more and more Muslims, and when you say that, it sounds like no, it's racist, or you can imagine the reaction. So you have always this topic which is a little bit complicated to deal with because you have people who stress that there is two kinds of anti-Semitism. There is the old anti-Semitism of the far right people who still exists somehow, but is not very important today, not so much. It exists, but you can find it a lot with conspirationist people who deny that the 11th September was made by Al-Qaeda, and they say it's the American government itself. In the far right, you find people who believe any conspiracy theory, and most of the time they believe it's the Jewish who control the world, you can imagine. And so there is this kind of anti-Semitism, and you have the anti-Semitism from Muslim. It's two different kind of anti-Semitism. However, it's interesting fact that now you have almost in some specific circles, you have a connection, a collaboration between Muslims and far right, because of anti-Semitism.
Yeah, that's to be expected. Those people on the far right probably want some form of socialism, though. They're probably not free market capitalists, so describing them as being on the far right is probably strange. They're probably... No. Once you get to the far right, you've circled back around and you're solidly on the left again.
Yeah, but you have to understand that it's in France. When you far right doesn't mean because in the Anglo-Saxon countries like America and Britain, right is free market and left is socialism. So it's quite simple to understand. But in France, it's completely different. It's not like that. Left, it's socialism. That's true. But right, it's also a kind of different socialism. It's only the more free market you have as a politician is. Maybe you will be sorry to hear this, but Emmanuel Macron is a more free market than almost all the French politicians. The current, I'm speaking about the current president of France, Emmanuel Macron.
He's more free market than almost everybody else.
Yes, compared to all the other French politicians, and and all the other French politicians, how they charge him when they criticize Emmanuel Macron. They criticize him of being too much free market, too much capitalism, etc. So in France, most of the time the free market ideas are in the center, more or less. And Emmanuel Macron is a centrist, I think, where compared to the other politicians is kind of in the middle, yeah, somehow. It's debatable, but I would qualify like that. But in France, yes, the right-wing people are not for free market and capitalism. They are maybe sometimes much more anti-capitalism than the left. Sometimes, they charge the left to be too much for capitalism. It sounds weird, but it's completely another perspective. It's completely different. And for example, I maybe an American intellectual called sorry, I don't remember his name now, but it's an American intellectual who make I can find his name later if you want, who make a connection between postmodernism and capitalism, and he said it's connected, it's quite the same, and it's a very, very successful idea in France among the right-wing people.
Is this Noam Chomsky?
No, it was not Noam Chomsky. It's I will find you his name.
Yeah, I can't imagine a connection between capitalism and postmodernism. I don't know what connection would be made. Very interesting. Well, and ladies and gentlemen, if you see over here on the left, I'm continuing to scroll through his blog entries in French as they are. I'm pretty sure I have some French-speaking viewers, so in fact, I'm certain of that. So you're still active on this blog here, right? Let's see.
Yeah, but I have not... okay, wait. I have found Christopher Lash.
Never heard of him.
Yeah, maybe I was thinking maybe he's more popular. He's American, but maybe he's more popular in France than in the United States.
Possibly. Christopher Lash?
Maybe I will send you on Facebook his name.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
Christopher Lasch. Okay. Very interesting. All right, I'll have to look into that. He's popular in France, you say?
I mean, no. Sorry, I will just to be more accurate. He's not popular in France, but he has a lot of influence in France.
He's known.
Not that he's very well known, but I know that a lot of people who are very well known in France are influenced by him.
Okay.
The right wing people who say, capitalism and postmodernism, it's connected, it's the same. It's how they argue this. It's because for them, postmodernism is the whim of the individual. They see it's like it's libertarianism.
Oh, okay. Yeah, postmodernism is like individual. They're such radical individualists because they have pink hair and they listen to their own music and they have their own pronouns. And capitalism is like everybody go their own way, pure individualism. Everybody do their own thing. So
yes, and there is no traditions, no common moral, this kind of thing.
Oh, okay. So capitalism is the destruction of tradition, and postmodernism is the destruction of tradition. So in order to save society, we have to revolt against capitalism, and we have to go back to some structure and tradition.
Yes, and this is how they advocate nationalism. you know,
Yeah,
and tradition.
now that's at the very beginning of our conversation. I started out by saying when you get a free country, it's going to be a mess. You're not going to like it. It's not going to have any traditions. It's not going to have any solid basic culture. It's going to be the lowest common denominator plus fast food. So
No, it's not what I was actually thinking. I was it's not what I think. I just want to be clear that it's how it can be understood by people, and it's why it's hard to convince people and to make it understand on the base on principles and not the challenge is to distinguish between concrete idea between principle and application, you know, to make the distinction, because sometimes it's hard with Ayn Rand, even in different fields, you know, in art, for example, in her aesthetics, you know, sometimes it can be hard to distinguish between her personal taste and her aesthetic principles, because you have to distinguish the concrete things and the principle, and sometimes in her writing it's not so explicit, you know. You can understand it by yourself, by if you're smart enough, like I am, of course, but there is a lot of people sometimes who don't understand, and people ask me, they email me, people who read my blog, they don't understand what is for example, I had an email from a guy, a friend, who said, okay, but I have a problem with objectivism. It seems to me that Ayn Rand has personal tastes in art, and she make it like a philosophical, rational theory that if you don't like the same art as her, you're being irrational. And he had a problem like that, and I had to explain, and it was not very simple, you know, that you have to distinguish, and how to distinguish the principle, and you don't have to be too much concrete bounds, you know, and sometimes it can be hard in her writing. So I was just saying that about when she speak about America, of course, she integrate her principle with concrete events, concrete things, and yes, and you have to distinguish and thinking, okay, how can I apply this principle in a very different situation, in a very different country, France, for example, or any country. It's the same for any country. And not understand it like copying America, like, okay, I have to build McDonald's in France. No, it's not a question of building McDonald's. It's a question of principle.
Yeah. Just on that subject, there are objectivists in the United States of America who despise America. I don't know if you saw, I don't know how many of my videos you watch, but I put one up just recently about an objectivist who says that he is ashamed of the people in Hong Kong for waving the American flag. He says America...
Yes, I've seen.
You saw this?
Yeah.
So explaining it in France is going to be hard enough. We don't even have our shit together in America. We've got all kinds of idiots in America, born and raised in America, in the land of the free and home of the brave, that hate the land of the free and home of the brave and call themselves objectivists. And I don't know how that happened. I told him this shit stops now. He's got to stop this shit, but I doubt he's going to stop.
Yeah.
But, so I don't think it's going to be an easy discussion or anything. But I think it's the only discussion that France, that's the future for France, I'm afraid. So, I don't know.
What future?
Sorry, you broke up.
What is the future for France?
Ayn Rand's ideas.
Ah, yeah, okay.
It's the only future. I mean, just like constitutionalism and the rule of law and a free market, those were the only future. And Western Europe had to be leveled and rebuilt. And how was it rebuilt? Constitutional governments and the rule of law. And if it gets leveled again, it's going to be rebuilt again. And the people running America now are running on Ayn Rand's ideas. Donald Trump is a libertarian, and he has people who believe Ayn Rand's ideas, telling him what his policy should be. Breitbart and Bannon and so forth. So Ayn Rand's ideas are all over the place. They're the only game in town. So they're the future for France too.
This is the optimistic future of France. But the pessimistic can be a Muslim Khalifa, a Muslim country completely. But because previously you talk about immigration, and the thing is sometimes, okay, I don't have a completely definitive position on this topic, but I want to point out that that interesting fact, which is among the people who immigrate in France from Muslim country, you have some people who want to evade Islam, and among those people, you have, I think, about 2% in particular who are the strongest voice against Islam. And the more brave and the more explicit and courageous, because they experience it.
Yeah.
And they are very without any concession, no compromise. They say no, you don't have. So, and the thing is, sometimes I was thinking about this, and I think it's this kind of people who have the best argument I know against Islam. Because they grew up and they know. Sometimes they have been taught Islam when they were kids, and they don't know the Quran, and they can argue and explain why it's dangerous, why this is, etc., etc. So, and I was very convinced by some of their arguments. So, and sometimes I was thinking, yes, you have to differentiate between Islam as a set of ideas, and because Islam is not a people, it's ideology. It's not a race, of course. It's not a country. Islam is, yes, a philosophy, ideology, call it how you want, but it can apply to, you have French people who are born in France completely, who are not from an Islamic country and who convert to Islam, and you have people from Islam country who evade Islam. So it's not only a question of immigration. I think we have to differentiate the immigration and Islam somehow. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not completely definitive on this question, but I'm thinking about this right now.
Well, I have an answer for it. The American system, I think, has an answer for it. We let them come in, but they have to get a job. We won't support them, and if they raise any trouble, virtually everybody in our society has guns. So they're not likely to get far in starting some sort of shooting war. Now they could take over a city in France and you all could do nothing. You'd have to have the police and the army do something. But if they start raising hell in America, we don't have to call the police or the army. We can fight back ourselves. So that, I believe, is the long-term answer in America. What I see as the most gloomy future of all is Islam takes over Western Europe, and we have a Muslim community in the United States that ostensibly obeys the law, but then exports jihad, and they would be a very rich community. Every community in the United States is very wealthy, and they would be a wealthy community, and they'll export jihad from the United States while living peacefully in the United States. That's what I'm really afraid is going to happen.
Yes, but here you are talking about something very specific. You are talking about when Muslims become directly violent. You know, because you speak about guns and things like that. But sometimes, it's not exactly like this that it happens. For example, in France, you have in the south of Paris, you have area called Seine-Saint-Denis. It's like a department of France, which is a more Muslim department of France. It's amazing how it became a very Islamic, but it's not a question about like people making terrorism. It's just that there was a lot of Muslim going and going and going and making a Muslim shop and wearing a Muslim. Sorry, I lost the word, but wearing the clothes of Muslims, and
Sorry, it's raining and it's rain starting to come in my open window here a little bit.
okay, and yeah, and applying Muslim traditions, and nobody was violent. It's just the number of people, and they are together, and it's just the demographic event. They just were a lot of people in the same place at the same time, making their tradition, and now the department is not take over, but almost take over. You understand what I mean? It's not like nobody makes something violent.
Well, I suspect you're talking about the areas that immigrants are sent to or they're allowed to go or whatever. I know that because of book by Bruce Bauer, I think, he writes about the fact that areas where the Muslims are allowed to live in the cities, the bus routes do not run from there, for example, right into the center of Paris. You have to go a roundabout way and change buses several times to get into sort of the white downtown area, touristy area. They are not easily connecting these areas, and so they're separating off, in some very important sense, these Muslim districts. And what goes on in those Muslim districts? I mean, we know that honor killings go on in there. We know that child rape goes on in there. We know that genital mutilation goes on in there. So, I don't know if they're as innocent as you say. They were in there just practicing their traditions, but their traditions are child rape and genital mutilation and honor killings.
Yes, I understand what you mean. Yes, there is violence in this sense. Yes, there is a lot of violence in the area I was talking about. But I meant that this it comes afterward. You know, I don't know how to explain it. It's just it's gradual. It's not like I don't know. It's just the.
You mean this event has come on slowly over time?
Yeah, it's not like one day there was we wake up and it became a Muslim, and it's become very gradually. And
now, do you remember the events of 2001, September 11th? How old were you then? Were you old enough to appreciate what was going on?
Yes. I'm 32.
Okay, so the events of September 11th, at that time and over the next 5, 7, 8 years, what did you think about that? Did you think that's America's problem? The Muslims hate America. They don't hate France. France is at peace with the Muslims. Were you in that thought?
Okay, at the time, when you say 7 or 8 years after the event?
Yeah, after September 11th, for some period of time, it was sort of the judgment that that's America's problem. The Muslims don't hate Europe, they hate America.
At the time, yes. at the time I was in a very, very different framework of thinking.
A lot of people
And,
were. A lot of people were. Yeah.
and I think I was kind of anti-American at the time. And I thought like Americans were must have been very bad to get this kind of answer.
Now, just to remind the audience, you found objectivism in around 2009 or something, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So your view of it was they must have been playing dirty somewhere in the world in order to get that done to them.
I think I think to be honest, I think at the time I was not too much interested in this event.
You would have been just a teenager then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and now as events transpire, Muslim terror, Islamic terrorism is a really big problem in France, and I suspect it's probably a bigger problem than we know here in the States. You guys probably have more attacks than we realize, and Notre Dame was probably a Muslim attack of some kind.
Oh no, sorry. I have two things to say. First, I remember I was thinking, and I remember something that I was thinking at the time of the 11th September. I was thinking that why we are making so much about this 11th September, while there is a bomb attack in the Middle East all the time. I was thinking, why are we focused? Because they are Americans, so they are the first power in the world, and we focus on this attack, which happens every day in the Middle East. And why it's we focus like it is so important. There is this kind of event happens all the time in the Middle East, and I was thinking I didn't understand why. Why it was so much a big thing. Yeah, it was my thinking at the time. And the second thing, what did you say? What was your question again?
Well, I don't recall, but let me put you on. Sorry, that got some lightning here. Let me put you on that thought that you were just doing. So, what do you think now of? There were only 2,800 people killed in the September 11th attacks. Only 2,800. That many people get killed every few months or whatever through terrorism in Afghanistan alone. So, what's your justification now? Is it legitimate for us to be upset about 2,800 deaths?
Oh, yes, I think yes. No, I don't have I have really very, very different idea now. But the thing is, the ideas that I had at the time, I think there is a lot of people in France who have, and still today, who have this kind of feeling, this kind of perspectives, especially on the left, on the extreme left, on the far left, I think, because there is so much anti-Americanism. And but no, I think yes, it's completely a tragic event. It's not because yes, because you asked about the terrorism we have in France. Yes, maybe now we have more terrorism, Muslim terrorism in France than there is in the US. I don't know. I'm not completely sure. But you asked about Notre Dame. I was thinking about that. No, I don't think it's Muslim attacks for Notre Dame. There was inquiry. There was inquiries about that, and there was. It seems, of course, I'm not fully sure, but it seems that there is very solid evidence that it was an accident.
All right. So, what about the other 100 and some churches that have burned in the last couple of years? It's more than 100. It's like 100 and 115 churches or something that have burned in France.
Oh yes, it's possible. Yes, I don't know exactly, but I don't follow. You know,
You haven't
I
heard?
don't
It's
follow.
not public knowledge.
No, I heard about, but I don't follow the news so much. Most of the time, I follow. I'm so much in um, general principle of philosophies. Like it's just me, but sometimes I feel that if I follow the news, there is a lot of things that tomorrow will be not interesting. That I prefer to focus on things which which are interesting for all time. You know what I mean? So
Well,
I don't follow, and
what?
maybe, of course, but maybe in the French media also they maybe they don't tell everything, or they underestimate some facts, and maybe I didn't heard about everything because of that. It's possible,
Yeah.
but
Well, if Notre Dame was less than 1% of the church fires, would that make you reconsider whether Notre Dame was done on purpose or was just a accident?
can you repeat? If Notre Dame
Was less than 1% of the churches burned. Less than 1%. I mean, if Notre Dame's the only fire, sure, maybe it's an accident. But what if there are many churches and Notre Dame's just 1%, or actually less than 1% of the church fires in France, just in the last couple years?
the thing the thing is I have to to rely on evidences,
Sure. Well,
and
if the
if
evidence was that 100 churches had burned, wouldn't that make Notre Dame look a little more suspicious and less likely to be just an accident or a fluke?
yes, but oh, if evidences shows without any doubt that it was an accident, and it seems to me, of course, I haven't studied so much the case, but it seems to me that it was the case. I'm not, I can't advocate this point of view with very specific argument showing you this and this,
Sure, of course.
but it seems to me that it has been like almost 100% proved. So and so I cannot take arbitrary hypothesis and looking for the evidences for the it's not arbitrary because it's but when you say okay it's maybe less than 1% of the church burns, uh, it's not a proof in itself, but I cannot take like okay maybe it is a Muslim terrorism, and then I will look for the evidence that confirm what I think from the beginning.
All right. Yeah.
I
Now you're not able to see this, but on the screen I've got a news article that says Catholic churches are being desecrated across France and officials don't know why. Posted in March of this year on Newsweek.com. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, now there's one on Snopes. All churches destroyed in France in the last 4 years. Alright, so anyways, yeah, there's a big discussion going on about it. 102... 100 related to property crimes. So, anyways, yeah, look into it. I don't think Notre Dame was an accident. Oh, there it is. so that the folks can see all of the incidents, churches destroyed in France over the last 4 years. And this map apparently includes also destruction of property and stuff, not necessarily burning down of a church, but my God, it's a map that is all full of stuff. But anyways, yeah, there's a discussion going on about it, but there it is. Well, Gio, I think we're probably reaching the end of our rope here. Should we say anything else before we finish up? I'd like to discuss more stuff with you in the future, the next couple weeks or something. We should do this again, see how the audience likes our discussion, if they have any questions for us.
Oh yes, no problem. I'm really sorry to... sometimes I miss the words that I need, and sometimes, yes, I'm a little bit uncomfortable because I don't know how to explain this in English, and because I miss a lot of words, and I'm slow to explain things, or I repeat myself, or I make mistakes, and I feel uncomfortable because of that. So sorry, big sorry for that.
Well, you speak English better than a lot of Americans. Besides, some of my best viewers are from Pakistan, and there's even an Irish guy, so...
Okay.
All right, thanks a lot, Gio. We'll watch for this video on my channel, and we'll be in touch. We'll talk again, all right?
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Thank you. Have a good one. All right, well, that was a very good discussion, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me. If you want me to do more discussions like this, interviews with objectivists apparently from around the globe, and debates, and takedown videos, and whatever else, then go to Patreon and give me $5 or $10 and support me in my activities on YouTube. If you support me in my activities on YouTube, then literally go support me. Thank you. Mr. Copper out.